Hello, David.
Hello, how are you?
Your definition of running a little late and mine are very different.
Well, you know what? It looked like it was going to go much longer, and
There
and
you go.
then they said, "Time's up. We're done." So,
Nice.
um, so yeah, it was different foundation. It's the movie industry for one, ASWF. So they, the guy who's leading it is who's doing a lot of the who is covering a lot of the panel was from Industrial Light and Magic. And has all the
Nice.
Star Wars stuff behind him.
Oh,
Going,
well, that's so
well,
cool.
that exactly. I'm going. My cool meter is just nowhere near yours. I got a cool goose.
Nice. Nice. Awesome. Okay, so yeah, we can just kind of get started. So David, we were just commenting. A lot of folks are probably on vacation, so this and next time will probably be super light. So really just wanted to kind of go through kind of the major projects, talk a little bit about hiring. I have a new project idea I just wanted to kind of throw out there to see what sticks. And then obviously if you guys have any other anything you'd like to talk about, add it in the chat. This can be, we have an hour for discussion, so we can do whatever we want. So first off, for security reviews, Amir, any news or anything of interest to note on that?
Nothing new and exciting. Just a lot of the cleanup has been done, which is nice, and yeah, I haven't done too much updating in the last 2 weeks.
Okay. Cool. I'll just say.
However, I'm actually real quick. I'm looking at your one. There's one pull request from February.
Oh, the one with all the things in it.
Yeah, like with NuGet and NPM and stuff like that.
You know, I'll take action on that today. I'm thinking of just closing that.
Okay.
The impacted projects were deleted from NPM, like part delete, like shift delete. So there's actually, while interesting, it will never be actionable.
I see.
So I'm thinking, yeah, this was the dependency confusion backdoors that went in. This.
Yeah, and then regarding the security MD, I know we discussed it a little bit in the last session. I was wondering if y'all wanted to discuss a little bit further today.
Let's do it. Yeah. Welcome, Matt. So.
All right. Nice timing.
Yeah. Let me bring up the I think it's here. Yeah, so that was kind of the take on it. Yeah, did you have thoughts you wanted to start with, or just?
Well, I thought some of those resources that you uploaded were pretty good. I thought that that initiative, the Trey Waters one, was definitely a good start because it had, a lot of the kind of those basic building blocks, so that we're not recreating the wheel here, and we can build on something, to if we wanted to include, more more YAML, more metadata opportunities. But I thought at least as a starting point, I thought it was pretty solid. And then when just thinking about a little bit about how we would, I guess, announce this or advocate for it, one thought that came to mind was just basically doing a blog post saying, this is an opinion, almost like an opinion piece saying that, security.md is a good practice. This is what we think should happen. This is some resources we put together in our working group. and just put it out there. That's just a thought. I'd obviously love to hear everybody else's thoughts and ideas. Those were just some initial ones that from our last discussion.
So more like a request for comment, like not a formal RFC, but just a, hey, what do you guys think? Like out to the world, or hear our opinions.
Well, yeah, it's just a tough line to walk because, I guess there's so many different opinions here and whatnot. So, and for things to be, I guess, formally endorsed, there is quite a long process to it. So I almost wonder if an opinion piece would be better, just saying, hey, based on some discussions that we've been having and looking at what's out there, we think having a security MD file and all the OSS repos on GitHub is a good practice. It should contain this. This is a template that we put together, something along those lines. I think if we want to build it out further, maybe into something more formal, like this structured security MD, that would obviously involve probably a little bit more of a coordinated effort before we really put something out there as an opinion piece. So again, these are all just kind of thoughts that I'm spitballing out there.
I guess the question here is what is really needed? In my mind, the most important thing is how do I contact if I find a vulnerability? In either a URL or email list or something. That's the most important. Second most important maybe is some sort of, and it's a very different kind of use, is the why do I think this is secure? Security information. I would call it an assurance case, but basically it's the why do I think it's secure? Assurance. Well, I would call it an assurance case, and suppose there you go. Why do I think it's secure? The typical name for that is a formal name is an assurance case, by the way. So I would put the word insurance case in there. Yeah, assurance case.
Okay. Yeah, absolutely. And
after that, I don't want to do a lot of structuring of data if nobody needs the data.
Well,
how much else do you need?
We need the data, David.
You need all the data.
We need a roadmap for where people go centrally to disambiguate other security related information. So
okay, what is that other information?
What I posted. If you want to read my response, that's the start of it.
Okay.
Reference.
Okay, this is back on the mailing list.
For my health, I didn't put it for my health, but I can go through it. I mean, it's all the things we're trying to address with the executive order. So most people in cloud native space, and again, we're supposed to be focused on open, and cloud is our future. No doubt about that. There's lots of automation already present, but you hit the nail on the head. It's about first access to existing information. So we need a roadmap. Where do I go definitively to point me to the other artifacts and the other information that may already exist and not cause duplication? So to me, it's saying, here's a set of information we'd like to know from an auditing standpoint, from an executive order, security compliance standpoint, and if there's information about both manual or automated processes, include that as well. So I know other work groups here in the OpenSSF, especially the SigStore project and Salsa, are working very hard at automation with Cosign to produce all types of application, whether it be jars or any type of package manager, and they've integrated that in Check's project and Tecton at the CNCF, and also the update framework at the CNCF. So clearly there's a broad picture that we need to enable and connect with being developed in our sister groups and sibling groups in the OpenSSF. We should do that. If there are information we can provide definitively that can be used by that automation to do lookups, to do content information, to open up issues, to send notifications to people, you got SAS scanning, DAS scanning, whatever, notify these people, contact these people, produce reports, here's where I store my evidence. All those things, there needs to be a roadmap, a centralized place to do it, and it needs structure so it can be parsed and used in automation, period.
My concern is how many people will do that. If it's hard, they won't do it.
but you can create different profiles. You say, here's the minimum table stakes, but at least have a vision for how it could be used and submit that vision to the people and let them decide. That's what you do. And and if other projects are could use this information, let's add that and show how it connects together, connective tissue.
Would it be helpful to dive deep on this? I mean, we can do this right now and come up with a made up spec. Yeah, it doesn't matter what it is, and then iterate on it. Because I agree with everybody, but like I think it would just be useful to make it up as we go and for for the next 45 minutes try to.
That's the cloud native way. Put the kitchen sink in there, put it out there for review and comment as an issue in GitHub, and that's cloud native. I mean, it's iterative. Open an issue, create your MVP,
Yep.
and have at it.
So let's see here. I need to open the. Can you? Let's see.
Yes.
Here. I need to open up the working group notes page here.
There's a link to the issue, but for collab.
Yeah, I've already got the issue open.
Sake, let's doing it in the meeting notes is probably more effective. So
a data
I found that trying to get initial stuff done in Google Docs, because you can all edit at the same time, and then once it's a little further along, switch it over. Okay. There we go. Meeting notes.
Yeah.
All right.
Link to the security policy if there is one.
Yeah, do we want to be concrete and say if it's a security.md file, that's a markdown file, give me the names of the headers and the subheaders and then describe what would go in there?
I'd say let's wait on the actual implementation of this, and let's just go with what data do we need, and we can.
Okay. All right. Fair enough.
Okay.
Okay. Vulnerability reporting. How to report a vulnerability. Email address. Okay. Address.
Yeah. Critical. And maybe for critical flaws or sensitive information, I like the idea of an encryption key for the email address, the PGP key.
Mm-hmm.
If that's.
Yeah, I think security practice is broad. We'll probably end up breaking it down into sub-topics. I mean, there's the both if you look at the CI/CD processes, you have processes for contributions, how that works, how those are secure. Do you require signing and stuff like that? So the processes might have multiple links. I'll just point that out.
Okay, makes sense. And then would it make sense to just, if we're thinking of kind of automation as well, just a simple check, do you have a security MD file? Yes, no, something like that.
I think it's good to say, I think in my mind we're going to be providing references to two, either prose, human readable things, or things that reflect artifacts that can be used in automation. There are those two kinds, but that will work itself out as we iterate and dig deeper. And there's also like release. What's my release process? How is my release process secure? There what signing keys are signing keys and the methodology for signing release artifacts. But the big thing is bills of materials. Where can I find my bill of materials? And how do we disambiguate format? What format? I know that SPDX has implied format by extension, but sometimes that's not clear in other formats or other cases. So.
Yeah, one trouble here is that there's going to be multiple bills of material. You need to identify for that particular one.
There are a lot of interesting conversations to be had about bills of materials, especially with new versions coming out. But yeah, because a lot of the information can be, a lot of further on information is actually or can be duplicated in those things. So, there might be a case where people put the bombs and they just reference their bombs or some, if they use XML or something like that, they can use an interdocument link, some type to point to the section in the XML document of the bomb to say, here's where you contact me, those type of things, right? So choosing how you link is important, right?
And then calling to David's point of the security assurance, would it make sense to also potentially integrate the security scorecards into something like this, into your security.md file?
The only trouble there is that, it's externally run and you bring it back. I mean, at some point, do you just run it and get that instead of trying to bring it in here?
Right. Or maybe just an API to your security scorecard data.
URL to, pointing
yeah.
to security scorecard result.
Alternatively, I think there was chat last time or the time before about being able to kind of override the security. So security scorecard says you're not using SAST, but you are. So you make mention of that in this file, and therefore the security scorecard picks that up and says, I don't know how it would know to trust it, but let's just assume it trust, because I guess you could, yeah. And it overrides and says, yes, you do. So it's kind of like making sure that we can provide all the data that security scorecard needs, so that it has to do less guesswork.
I actually think that's almost a broader issue here. It's almost the current security practices. I think if that's what you're talking, could provide override data for security scorecards, et cetera, right? Because that would be true for all that, right?
I mean, I don't think we should tightly couple this to scorecard. But rather, okay, so if you look at scorecard and it says, okay, does the project require code reviews before code gets merged? The question I would ask is the fidelity of that check not nearly 100%? And I think you could probably just tell just by looking at actual PRs to see if there's been a review.
I'm glad you're showing this, because to me, this is kind of like, if the scorecard is our way to assess, and these are the criteria, and instead of, this, to me, the roadmap is to disambiguate, as I said earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So anything in here that cannot be inferred by the tooling or guessed at by the tooling, I believe should be in a security MD or like file to help the tool to disambiguate. Mm-hmm. So the granularity you have here is fabulous,
Yeah.
I think that, again, you could have profiles to say, here's the minimum set of data we expect, here's your vulnerability, reporting information minimum. But if you want to really work with us and you want your scorecards to go up, then disambiguate and you'll help our tool out. And here's the schema. Here's the links and stuff.
Have you seen the salsa framework?
Absolutely.
Okay, so I mean, it also, well, this guy here, I mean, these are all kind of dancing around the same like thing. So, like, I wonder if, like,
yeah, I mean,
decided
no, I'm following you. Yeah, I believe I'm with you. I mean, these are the guiding things that that will need to be needed as well. What are the processes? What's our provenance? How do we prove that?
yeah,
So here's my belief system. My belief system is, this artifact we're creating is great because we can dictate what goes in it, and we don't have to mandate it or require it necessarily, but it can be used for all of OpenSSF and our work groups, to like I said, the connective tissue. But over time, I believe a lot of the information might be duplicative in the bill of materials. So it's interesting. I think the bill of materials is evolving. If you look at Cyclone DX, I think, and if you look at what you get from private scans from a lot of companies like Twisted Black, White Source, they have a lot of this information in there. They just keep it private. So I'm just trying to put this in the public arena and give them a public place to put the same information. Now, if we can put it in the problem is the SBAM formats are not lossless when you convert between them. So SPDX doesn't have a lot of ways to express a lot of this data at all, or
Yeah.
Cyclone DX may. So it's great that we're creating this stopgap. But so it avoids. So if it exists in a BOM, reference it. If it doesn't, put it in our artifact. Absolutely. And I always think back to my Apache project. So Apache has processes, so I can point to the Apache process where applicable, and my overriding processes that build on top of that in my project at project level. And then if I'm asked to do even further to go into my build processes and things like Salsa is asking for, I can further describe those things. It's a tiered system.
Or maybe if this is the source data, then you can use it to help generate the SBOM format.
Yeah, I mean, there's been asked about reproducibility of SBOMs. There's two views. There's the views of the SBOM. So there's my BOM perhaps for automation and then there might be the public version of it. I know Microsoft at the TAC last week, Kay presented some things with I forget the name of the Secure Coalition, where there's a blockchain-based methodology, and she was talking about policies. So there's actually policies about what's expected for the build and the BOM and things like that. So, I think that, like I said, being informed by the Salsa work, being informed by the SigStore work, and making sure that we consider those, the criteria for those things, absolutely. The keys that are used in SigStore, how I produce those keys, which do I use OIDC? I use my own private system to generate ephemeral keys. Those, anything, we can add. It might be overwhelming, David. I completely understand that. But at least if you have the information, and I will over time, more and more people will have information. I just want to know where to hang it, where to put it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I think so. As a way to, and not to tangent us too much, if you had a web page that you as a project owner could go to and use create my security dot whatever file, and it goes and it does the scan, and then it comes in and it templatizes your templated thing with whatever it can filled in, and then you fill in what's missing. I'm trying to think of how to make this easy for projects to adapt.
Right. That's my work. And to be fair, please understand where I'm coming from. I've been repeatedly burned by folks trying to boil the ocean, and what was needed was a couple of fields. So having flexibility is good, but focusing on having here's how to get started that's useful, I think is key.
I think that's why you break it down by profiles. Here's the basic profile, 101, but I think we can produce profiles that incrementally add features like scorecard requirements, like things that are in this group. things that are supplied by this group that we have answers for, you know.
So
I mean, if I could have a 10 minutes to disambiguate a slide I just presented internally in IBM about an hour or so ago, you know, basically it shows an end-to-end security and compliance, a continuous compliance process for all of IBM service builds. And I would probably go through every output of every task from being complete, end-to-end supply chain process, and want a way to figure out where I'm required by government eventually to prove that to my customers, to where to find that data, where to find the evidence, where to find the artifacts, where to find all those things centrally. I'm hoping to put that all in an SBOM, but if I can't, I'd like to put it in another file for people to find, you know.
do you also think that perhaps doing this sooner, so the time frame involved in getting formal specs, you know, talked about, thought about, written down, approved, is really long. Does it make sense as a kind of an experiment to put this out there in the next whatever month, and then kind of use that to have the more productive conversations with SPDX, Cyclone, and everybody else?
I mean, I think my advice would be to follow the Kubernetes CNCF paradigm. Is like you create a spec, quote unquote, for a custom resource, and you mark it alpha. You know, you mark it alpha.
Yeah.
Create some tools around it, but it's marked alpha APIs, alpha tooling, alpha whatever, and then that gets people using it, and that invites comment, right?
Yeah.
So.
Okay. How does this, without drilling into any specific one here, is the direction that we have with these kind of bullets here under fields? You guys, does it seem like we're facing at least in the right direction?
Yeah, absolutely.
No, yeah, there's no doubt it's possible. My concern has always been the challenge of making it easy enough to use. You might make, I think with a little thinking, you could probably reorganize this to be simpler at least, and that would help, you know, make this a lot more palatable. If you can take it so that, now see, if you can make this so that it is easy to extract for the other tools that extract security data, and I'm thinking about security scorecard, CI best practices badge, and Salsa. Now you have a better argument for why would I bother to do that? And SBOMs.
Yep.
You know, so maybe below this, the what the argument here is not just creating data sets, it's who is going to be used, who will use this and how, who would use this and how. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's compatible with the profile concept. So
right, but we got to be specific. Who's going to use it? First of all, the security analysis, measurement, evaluation systems, and here I'm thinking about CI best practices, badge, security scorecard, Salsa, etc. Provide data they can directly consume. Right, because probably there's not going to be one measurement system for everybody. There isn't now. But if everybody can bring, okay, security researchers for reporting vulnerabilities, right? Absolutely. Who else is going to need it? Frankly, I would put them first.
Well, I mean, I think it's broken down into two larger classifications: as producers and consumers. I know as a producer of software, there are things I want to produce. So I think that in my mind, things that I need to, and I feel I need to produce in response to the executive order and to my customers should be considered as in the basic profile. And a lot of it will be handwritten, manual, artifacts that I link to. So where's my SBOM, where's my security practices, where, all those type of things, right? So it's producers and consumers. Yeah.
Yeah, and just to build off that, you could argue that any consumer of a package would want to know some basic security information about said package. So this would be a good kind of central place for that.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean, it'll go back, like, I'm very proud of our projects that we've thought of these things, and I want to exhibit them in this document to my customers. So when they compare my product to competing products, even in open source, they know I've thought of these things, and I have a place to show them I've had a thorough thought process and actionable, readable, human readable things that can be viewed.
Like that, like
I would say there's no evidence, but we see no evidence they do.
well, as being different from they state within their security dot whatever that they do not.
Yeah, that's a much stronger statement. I suspect they won't. You won't get that. Or
Yeah.
But
the idea is that you could fail that operation based off of what's in this file easier than you could. Well, I guess it's similar. Higher fidelity than running scorecard locally, I guess.
Yeah.
It would be cool if we could do some kind of automated versioning as well, just like, last updated on X date, just so people have an idea of how, I guess, active people are on keeping it updated.
On keeping the file that we're creating updated or the project itself?
I would say keeping the file updated. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, maybe I think that is a good candidate for putting back to scorecard. If we have this file, scorecard could rate the file itself.
Right.
Yeah.
I've added it to the bottom.
Thank you.
Yeah, but thinking about ages made me no indication of accuracy or security. That's the problem. So maybe completeness of the file. I mean, and do some checks to make sure there's no broken links and stuff like that. But yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's the sanity. I would call it sanity check. Sanity check / lie detector.
Somewhere up above, CPE. Is there an alternative to CPE that has any usage?
Package URLs.
Okay.
For-
So I would call this just a way to identify, package identifiers.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't. I mean, again, I would avoid. I think these are things that are highly considered in bills of materials, and I think that if we can leverage bills of materials for those things, all the better. I think CPUs are actually deprecated.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Well, okay, NIST has deprecated them for 6 or 7 years. They're going to replace it with SWIDs, which don't work. They've been saying that they're going to replace it with SWIDs for years.
I'm recommending. My recommendation is using package URLs to replace, to be honest. But
yeah,
those are not recognized by SPDX necessarily. Yeah. So.
Yeah, they are. CPEs and package URLs both work.
There was a debate yesterday in the technical working group where they're. Well, anyways, I won't go there. But yeah, their belief system. There was a debate about creating external links, but all of their for relationships, and there's a staunch group of legacy people there saying that they're all XML namespace based internal links to the document, where we wanted to use full external references with full URIs and things like package URLs, but there seem to be a lot of, I worry about the movement of SPDX being able to adapt to the modern cloud native situation. But
yeah, that
too many XML wonks there. So
which is funny because XML expression is not a requirement for SPDX. That doesn't make any sense.
Well, even Kate Stewart returns and said we should be working on TV tag value format because it's most highly used. And somebody made the point, well, it won't be tomorrow. So, but she's like, there seems to be a belief system that, super simple tag value does it all, but I don't know. It doesn't provide a lot of the facilities. It doesn't provide a signing mechanism that's built in like to XML or JSON. It doesn't provide, any schema whatsoever. There's just tag values. So,
Cool. Okay, so this one we definitely need some next steps.
I think focusing on like what of these things can be grouped and what types of profiles we have, what would go in a minimum profile, the basic profile. I think that I'm seeing
I was a little skeptical. I'm throwing the chat. I'm going to link the current spec, which is SPDX 2.2, does include Perls. So,
thank you.
All right. So, I mean, I don't know what they're debating on. SPDX 2.2 includes package URL Perl. So, I mean, that's I don't know what they're discussing. That's done. At least 2.2, and I think that was even before, but I know that that's there now. All right. Anyway, okay. So
and going along with iterating on the fields above, I'm not exactly sure how to put this, but essentially making sure that there's one source of all the information, so people won't see something in one place, see it in another, and then another and another, where it kind of loses some of its value, I guess. So where like if something is in the security.md file and it could easily be found in the SBOM, for example, just making sure it kind of everything has one source in a way where things aren't.
Need a single source of truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, I view this as a roadmap that this be a lot of collection of links.
Yeah. And I also love the idea of just maybe building a template of some kind eventually, or something that people can build off of. Or
yeah, and I think there's a legitimate question: is this a generated file, or is this where you get the data from? We may not need to make that decision in general, but a project better make that decision.
I know that if we have manual artifacts that go in it, and I only know how to, I mean, it goes like if Score can't do it, clearly it's a manual process in my mind.
Yeah, I was thinking perhaps the first cut of this file gets created automatically somehow, but then if it's good as is, then we don't need to generate it at all. We could just rerun that function that creates the tool whenever you need the data. I think the value of this is that it provides something that only humans know, or that tools are unable to discern.
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that single source of truth, I think, is a good thing aspirationally. I don't know how hard we can stick to that without, like, okay, so you have a reference to Coverity in your Travis CI file. Is the SAST section of this file saying Coverity C, Travis.yml?
The implementations are wide and varied, and they're going to change over time. So, yeah.
But I think the answer is yes. I mean, I can tell you that from so let me pull up the CI best practices badge because I lead it. So let's imagine for a moment that this file might be yanked in by various tools like the CI best practices badge. What the CI best practices badge expects is what is the value of this question and what's the justification. And I would expect that for a lot of these, a brief text justification with links to where do I see the evidence. So for example, in the case of Coverity, point off to the Travis or the GitHub config that invokes Coverity when you do a commit update. And that's my evidence that, in fact, and by the way, if you follow that, and maybe another link that points you to, and here's the current version of that output.
Yeah, I was doing a quick check against that paradigm. Basically, it's kind of like there's a security practice, and I have a reference to that practice either in automation or in prose or both, and then I have evidence for it. So it's always a pairing. Process, governance, evidence. So each field might have to have links to those things, right?
Yeah, evidence, and I would also say, evidence and justification. I guess maybe it's, for all things, you're basically. So I'm adding this, the actual the expect. Well, I guess it's the field, field name, the value claimed, justification text.
Yeah.
And evidence URLs.
Yeah, this is the corollary to what I was referencing earlier when I've completely depicted our internal IBM CI/CD process for our federal cloud, and I said I wanted the ability for the customers to have a link to every output from every point in our CI/CD process, every artifact, every piece of evidence. So total agreement.
Cool. I like it.
I'll just note ahead of time. There's always, if you have text, then you have the glories of natural language.
I like unnatural language.
Well, if I don't say natural language, they'll think I'm talking about C versus Rust versus JavaScript.
So I mean, for prose, basically, I think it's just a simple consideration of demarcating whatever the prose language is.
Right.
And
is it EN or whatever.
Then allow third-party processors to do natural language translation. So.
Right. Yeah. English, French, whatever.
Actually, I'm going to add a link to a threat model in the above. Yeah. Too few projects do threat modeling, but if they do, it would be good to know.
Bam! I didn't think about it either. So.
Nice. Contributed value. Okay, so we're going to meet again in 2 weeks. Do we want to try to have a couple examples, or I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole without iterating, but it might make sense. Like questions might more naturally appear when you see a whatever, pick YAML, a YAML version of this for a tool for a project.
Yeah.
Would anybody like to volunteer to come back in 2 weeks with something concrete?
I could do a short something. I think my model, my mental model may be different than yours, and some others. Whereas, we've been calling it Security MD, but I think this is something different now. It's not really, it's not necessarily a document. If it's a true database schema, it's basically telling me the security information about this project in a way that other tools can hopefully snag it instead of trying to guesstimate it. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, I think so.
Should
I mean, it still is a file, but it's a structured thing.
It's probably going to be a file because you're probably going to check it in.
Yeah.
First of all, I'm all for YAML or JSON because it is, easily parsable through simple mechanisms. It seems to be a paradigm that's been adopted for configuration for SigStore in many places. So it's very compatible. I would propose that we have an interim working group meeting for those interested and actually start hashing out like a YAML-based minimum profile piece of content.
That sounds good. I can commit to.
Okay, I will commit to that also. So, yank up that schedule. When do you want to meet again? I'm good with more meetings if we actually get things done. Let's see here. I'll continue to beat my drum on simple as possible.
I mean, next week at this daytime, so.
Let's see here. There's a track. What's it? I have a conflict that hour, but if we can start 1 hour late, basically this target, the time 10 minutes from now and whatever time zone it is would work. If we can slip it 1 hour later, next Wednesday, I could do it.
I can't do 11 next. Does any day of the week work better for you guys? Wednesday seems to.
Tuesday the same time that we've been meeting would be fine.
Tuesday's good for me.
That works.
At what time are we talking about Tuesday?
This same slot.
Same slot. So 1 p.m. Eastern, which is 10 a.m.
10 Pacific. Yeah.
10 Pacific.
That works. I've got a blocker I didn't plan to attend.
Beautiful. I will send out a meeting invite. I'll do it to everybody on the call today. If you're not interested, feel free to not attend. But
okay,
that way that's easy, and it'll be for Tuesday the 10th at 10 a.m. Pacific.
Awesome.
Cool.
Okay.
Awesome. Okay, moving on a little bit. So metric dashboard, I don't have any updates. I did see a couple. I saw a PR from you, Dylan. I think that came in a while ago, but I'll take a look at that right after this meeting.
Yeah, it's just a simple minimum kind of tutorial. I didn't really know what we were looking for, so I just kind of made a basic breakdown, markdown kind of tutorial situation, and then made some progress on the watchers thing. I submitted that to the criticality score project, and they're going to integrate it there. So I'm just working with them on that as well.
Nice job. Awesome. On hiring, so it sounds like we are kind of approved, except for the final actual pen to paper approval signature thing from the governing board. So as of right now, I'm going to start. I reached out to 2 firms that kind of do this, and neither of them were interested in the overhead to start a new thing for a half a resource. So I'm gonna keep plugging away at that and trying to find somebody interested. The contract will be for between now and at worst the end of the calendar year. It may extend beyond, but I don't know like how long I have to actually use these funds. So I need to get some clarity on what it would actually be. The purpose of this work would be to extend, improve, actually make the metric dashboard a real production thing. Move it over to a OpenSSF owned Azure subscription and do all of that stuff. So some of it is just cleanup work because we cut a lot of corners to get it out, and other parts of it are real new stuff. The other side is we do have extra money in there for other things. So if we want to hire a contractor to do really anything related to our working group, we should have money to pay normal rates for that kind of work. So that's good. I do need to create a job description though for the metric dashboard. I have a list of tasks, but I need to up level that a little bit so we can find the right person.
I will say that my experience, and this may be different than yours, has always been one of the biggest challenges is finding the right people.
Without a doubt. Yep.
So.
Okay, cool. So the last thing that I just wanted to kind of touch on quick was an idea that I've been mulling around, and this is not baked like many of my ideas. But I just wanted to throw this out there to see what sticks and just get thoughts. So internally, we run lots of tools on lots of open source, generating lots of bugs. Like most teams, we have limited resources in what we can do with the output of that. The tools themselves tend to be high false positive. We don't have the context. And so it's a painful triage experience. So what I was thinking was, particularly for security researchers, but perhaps there were other groups as well. What if we basically took all the tools we kind of collectively have, run it on all of the open source we can find, and we can do this stuff at scale to infinity. Get the output of those tools someplace that the security researchers can dive into and do things like, correlations of the same issue between different types of projects and like really like making it a power user experience for bug triage.
Now, wait. Are we talking like static analysis tools and fuzzers, or what? When you say
Yes.
tool, what do you mean?
Yes, I mean static analysis, fuzzers, anything in that kind of general category. So it's definitely security tools examining open source you put it in a box and you look at the box.
Okay. Now there are sensitivities in the past. I don't know that they're still true. So this may be only hysterical value, but at least historically, for example, Coverity was always very careful to not post the results of security analyses of open source software, even though you can argue, and correctly, that anyone could get a tool and run the analysis against the software. And that is absolutely true. And so it's a little bit of security through obscurity. But their pitch was always, we're trying to make it easier for people to secure things. We're not trying to make it easy for the bad guys. Hey, look here.
Yep.
So I think there's a sensitivity about this that doesn't make it wrong. I think we just ought to think through, is that the right thing to do? Yep. I actually am sympathetic to hey, you've had plenty of time. But if we're going to do it, we probably ought to give people a warning.
Yeah, I mean, I worry. I mean, that I'm reflecting on a blog that was forwarded to me last Thursday about pushback against the bomb, about how the bomb could be used for evil. But
right. And it's true, but that doesn't mean it's a bad thing.
So I guess having attended the security tools work group, I worry about I think in my mind there has to be a critical mass of tools that can be applied to the general space that produce comparable results. So I think the exercise would be to show that at least 3 tools could be applied to produce comparable results against at least 2 different types of applications. That'd be my minimum proof point, basically.
Sure. So
there are some gimmicks.
I'm sorry. Yeah, sorry, David. I worry about what you said, David, is that many of these tools are so specialized or looks for specific things that they don't produce comparable data, or a lot of the really cool scanning stuff, like they keep it private. They want you to pay for it. So I worry about how much can be accessed in the open source public domain.
Right. That's true too. And even if you run the open source tools where that's not an issue, there's that sensitivity of, hey, wait a minute, are you helping the bad guys? I know we're short on time. One thing that I had toyed with, I had done a little research years ago, but we don't have time. I can tell you some of the problems we had, but I had toyed with the idea of trying to do vulnerability densities, or at least report densities, where you count it up, you divide by the lines of code. Yeah, okay, there's all sorts of problems I could do, but the theory is that if even if you've got a lot of vulnerability reports on a project, even if none of those vulnerability reports are actually correct, if there's a huge number of them, that suggests a lack of care that suggests you're more likely to have problems in general than without revealing, hey, right here is this line, this,
so
with this input, I crashed.
Broken Windows kind of theory.
I'm sorry?
Like a broken Windows kind of theory.
That's right.
Yeah.
I actually did an analysis years ago. I never got the report released. We can talk about that later, about the problems of that. Where I think there was some indication that vulnerability densities had some value, although they became, if your project was very small, it started to become dubious. Basically, if you take A divided by B and B is small, that can be problematic. Yeah, visible. The trade-off of should he make it visible, and
well, I mean,
because Matt mentioned the whole problem of can you even make it visible?
Well, meaning, are we ethically bound to not?
It may be legally bound. If you run the Coverity tool, you have to have a license.
Oh, no, right, sure, yeah, right.
And that license may say you can't post it publicly unless.
Yeah, I would strongly push back on using any tools that were at all iffy in terms of what we can do with the results.
Yeah,
right, absolutely. We shouldn't do that, but the problem is there's ethical as well as legal issues, as well as just what their expectations are.
I get it.
I think that what a lot of the barriers that I'm hoping to break down, you can tell my passion, and is that I think there's been too much obscurity and too much money being made off the security space, and not enough sharing of information. And I'm very pleased that this group especially is trying to break down those boundaries. I just wanted to say
that. I'll disagree with you when I disagree, but amen to that.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Awesome. I will continue thinking about this one. Maybe we'll chat about it more next time.
Can I throw out a quick idea just before I forget?
Absolutely.
Just throwing it out there, because when we're talking about having this potential, this data to analyze at scale and stuff, I think of, instead of making it public, if we did some rudimentary analysis among the work group, and then if we have some, money for, potential projects, we could potentially hire like an actual security firm or somebody to analyze the data. But they wouldn't do it for free. They would need to be incentivized, but that could potentially be an option too.
What about, and last point, then we can end, bug bounty, patch bounty, triage bounty. So we have 5 million findings in this thing. As a security researcher, you're invited to this platform. You get, $5 an issue to triage it, or whatever, depending on how long it takes, and $50 or $500 for a patch, and $1,000 if it gets accepted, or something like that, where we incentivize the crowdsourcing and pay reasonable rates.
Michael, I mean, a thought came to mind. I debated verbalizing it, but is there something higher order we could do as an interim step?
I think a URL. I think a bug bounty. Here's the URL. Our policy about bug bounties. Done. We can always add more fields later, but I've already added. I gotcha. It's the last one.
To complete my thought, though, is as a first order higher thing, I would suggest maybe we look at analyzing projects for attack vectors, and then recommending classes of tooling that can be run. It's a higher order thing. I think you can look at attack vectors. I think that's more doable, achievable, and then if you can go deeper with tooling, then so be it. But I think that different tooling will look at different attack vectors.
In other words, like, I see you're using a website, therefore you should, I see you're implementing a website, therefore you should use this tool?
Your APIs are not secure. You're using certain database connectivity. You're using, things, however is both about the design construction of your application and what tooling and what attack surfaces you have, basically. Attack surfaces.
That out as a shameless plug. But that says you're using databases and blob storage and blah blah blah. It would be pretty trivial to add in, and therefore you should check it with this or.
Yeah.
That, but yeah, cool, awesome. We're way over time. Thank you all very much. I will send out the invite for next Tuesday at 10 Pacific time, and I'll see everybody again in 2 weeks at minimum.
Thanks, Michael. Great discussion today.
Awesome. Thanks all.
Bye.